The volume.
I cannot.
So can we go turn it down?
Can you turn the volume down?
Yes.
I'll start. I'll start.
No, no. You are not. If you say that you're a complainer, then there is somebody sitting behind you. So that makes two of you.
It's just
And I'm saying those people are. How's this?
Move it up. Now you're not coming.
Try it now.
How's this? It's okay?
Little higher, little higher. Okay, now.
How about now?
Now.
Excellent. Very good.
Okay. Let's start the program with reciting Al-Fatiha. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdinas siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladzina an'amta 'alaihim ghayril maghdubi 'alaihim
And
I apologize for my voice. I don't know what happens once in a while. This is the voice which really messed up my singing career. so I don't sing anymore.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the topic of my presentation is venerable institutions and living lighthouses in our lives in praise of institutions and teachers. All of you, while going through your education, had teachers, I'm sure, had teachers that you still remember, that how they changed your life and the trajectory of your life. All of us had those people. But we don't celebrate them. They are somebody that we met on our journey during our educational years, and we seldom look back and to see that there were people who made a difference in our lives. So I was many years ago uh, looking at it, this concept, and I started putting together the teachers who I was fortunate to have during my primary school, high school, college, medical school, and after that. And when I put those things together, that ended up in a book. And I will mention about that book, which was 2005. I think we all accrue debt in our life. Once in a while, I come across some people, not many, thank God, and I would hear this thing. You know, whatever I have, I worked hard to get. Implicit in that statement is a sense of arrogance, which totally ignores the people who have given us a hand to step from one level to the other level. And to say that if I have achieved an academic level or business level, that it is all because I did. And I say that to a loud nonsense. It's not true. There is a painting that many of you would be familiar with. This was painted by Raphael in the 13th century. It is in Vatican. It's a fresco. And what Raphael did was amazing, other than painting is amazing, but he brought together philosophers and scholars spanning at least 3 centuries and put them together as if they were contemporaries. It is called School of Athens. This painting is called the School of Athens. And there are people that probably, there is Aristotle and Socrates, and here is Pythagoras, and the person looking over his shoulder is Ibn Rushd, the famous Arab physician, scholar. He was a polymath and left so much. The reason I'm showing you, one reason is showing this painting is that there were Arab scholars who were in the same category when the Western scholars were put in one place. So Ibn Rushd was a very well-known scholar, philosopher, surgeon in Spain, in the Spain and Portugal, Iberian Peninsula. In my case, this journey was about 26 years, and it didn't stop at 26 years. It was an enchanting journey of learning, discovery, and self-realization, which still continues. So here's a list of institutions, and I'm sure that all of you can identify with them as you went through the institutions in your journey. The primary school was just close to my home. I was there between 44 and 47. High school was about a mile away, because between 47 and 53. Then my undergrad college, 53 to 57, and then the medical school, which was 57 to 68. By the way, in India and Pakistan, we attend primary school, which is about 4 to 5 years, and then we go to high school. And we start 5th grade in the high school. Yeah, unlike America, where the high school is only that junior and senior. And then the middle school is from 5th to the 10th grade. But in India, Pakistan, we make it very simple. You just, from primary school, you go to high school. And here is a list of things it was those teachers that they got me interested in exploration, writing, photography, calligraphy, history, religion, philosophy, and see, I wrote surgery in a very small point, and that is, yes, they taught me, eventually I became a surgeon. They taught me surgery, but there are so much other things which they taught. And I mentioned about this book that in 2005, I've compiled a book in which I discussed different institutions that I was privileged to attend, and also teachers from, not all, but selected teachers from each school. There are maktab in Persian and in Arabic and Urdu. Persian and Urdu means the door of the maktab. So if you translate that, it will be what in Arabic?
باب المعرفة.
Yeah.
باب المعرفة.
Darul Maktab. Yeah. The reason, okay, and another thing I want to draw your attention to is, do you identify the door? These were the wooden tablets that we used to write on in primary school. with a reed pen and tufting, tufting, a reed pen and black ink. We used to write on it. So this artist made this thing is that it was through that door, that wooden tablet. I'm sure you have them in the Middle East.
Tablets?
Yeah, wooden tablet. Either I'm showing my age. Yeah. So anyway, this artist did a wonderful job, and on that he wrote the alphabet. That's what we, yeah, alphabet on that. And we will have a homework. We will bring that home and wash it with the water and take clay and put a coat of clay on that, let it dry, and then you are ready to write.
Chalkboard.
You can call that. It was the size of about that long, that wide, and this was very typical, the handle,
Oh.
with the handle. And you know, we got in fights and we used this as a weapon. Yeah.
Hmm. Here they use it to whack the students.
This primary school was about 100 yards from our home. I used to walk. And this was the headmaster. He was known keeping few canes. And because of those canes, his nickname was the Bone Breaker. It was his nickname, the Bone Breaker. Because at one time, he probably beat up a student and broke his bone. And that moniker got fixed with him, and we were all scared of him. But he ran the school with a lot of discipline. This teacher was a poet, and he wrote in Urdu, Persian, and Hindi language. And at one time, he was the student of a very famous poet in India, Dal Dehlavi, that some of from India would know the name, Dal Dehlavi. He was. So he had a wonderful way of inculcating interest. So he will ask us, he said, write down a famous saying or a short Quranic verse or a piece of poetry on a piece of paper and bring it to me, and whoever had the best handwriting, I will put that by my desk. As so we would compete with each other, and along the way I learned calligraphy. He is the man. I was in second grade that emphasized to write legible, but instead of hitting me or hitting us on the head that you are not writing legible, he developed this competition where all of us would bring, and he will look at them, and then if he liked one particular, he will put it with a little thumbtack on the wall by his desk. Believe me, once or twice I was there. It's almost like having an exhibition in a major museum at that age. So I still carry the legacy of this man with me in calligraphy. And every year at the international festival, okay, I make money for the Islamic Center. Yes, I have been doing that for as long as the festival has been around. razzle dazzle people and try to get some money from their pockets and writing their names on the cards. So imagine we're talking about it was almost 78 years ago. Yeah. But the man has left an impression on me. This was our high school, and I mentioned that the exploration, the Boy Scouts was part of that. And I don't know whether you can recognize me or not, but I am in that group. I am sitting down on the ground, and I'm almost in the middle.
Yeah, I did.
Almost in the middle. Not much difference from now and then.
Right.
Not at all.
Just a little bit. But that joining the Boy Scouts, we didn't call them Boy Scouts because there were no Girl Scouts, called them Scouts. So we would have jamborees and we would have visits to other schools and all that. And it inculcated the spirit of cooperation, just like the motto of the Boy Scouts in America is. And these were the teachers, and I remember each and every one of them and what they did. This was the headmaster of the school. He was a mathematician. He wrote textbooks. One time there was a calamity somewhere in the country and they were collecting money. So he addressed the students. And he said something very simple. He said, if somebody can afford it and he has got a lot of money, and if he will give only part of it, and if you have only 5 pennies in your pocket, and you give that, your contribution is bigger than that man's contribution. It's a question of perspective. I did not understand that even a small donation can make such a difference. If you have all the money in the world, you can write a check, right? But if you have only pennies, and you also have to buy your snack, and if you give away, that man, I still remember him so vividly where he gave this talk to the student body. So I write for the Blade, right? And I also write for other publications. English is not my mother tongue. He was an English teacher. And he used the cane and to instill in us grammar and how to write. And how to write in a way which would be simple. He taught mathematics and English. I did not realize because of him that I got interest in writing. Years later, I went to see him. He asked me what I was doing, and I said I was in medical school. And he says, I'm surprised. And he says, I thought you would become a writer or a journalist. This was his prediction. But he molded us in our class to speak good English and to write good English. And I think every time when I get a check from the Blade for my columns, I think of him. That he helped me create another source of income, right? So this next teacher was also very interesting. He was a science teacher. And one time he was teaching us gravity. And he mentioned that if the apple which fell on Isaac Newton's head, if it had come from 4 times or 5 times the distance, it would have broken his head. I mean, we did not understand how could that. So what he does, he invites a sheikh who was well known in the city, one of the mosques. He was a khatib. And he was also a teacher in high school. He invited him to come and talk to us about gravity. Now, this sheikh came and he gave us the tafsir of Surah Al-Fil. You remember this surah in which the Abyssinian king, who at that time ruled Yemen, he attacked Mecca with elephants. And this is in the Quran, and he says, تبت يدي أبي وتب ما أغنى ماله وما كسب
ما أرأيت الذي
سيصلى نارا ذات لهب وامرأته حمالة الحطب في جيدها حبل من مسد. That didn't you hear the story that how we destroyed the army of the elephants? The birds had the clay stones in their talons. Yeah.
The surah is not correct. The one you mentioned. That's how it feels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Surah Al-Fil.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but the one that you read was a different one.
Abu Lahab.
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
But you know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't take Arabic in high school. I took English.
English.
I'm sorry. No. So, no, I said Tabbat Yadabi. No, I said,
You meant.
Alam tara kayfa fa'ala rabbuka bi So they had these stones in their talons. The birds, the flock of birds came and they released them. And when they came from the very height, they were like bullets. And the Quran says, and they were at the end almost like a, help me out,
Field of straw.
field of straw. It was like broken down field of straw. Thank you. Yeah, that is the word it is used. So I did not understand when our teacher told us that if that apple would have come from a great height, it would have broken his head, and we would have been deprived of the scientist. But since we questioned how could it happen, because we could never fathom in our mind something coming from that height, so he brought this Khatib to explain and link science to religion. So after finishing, I went to my undergrad college, which is called Islamia College. I was there for 4 years. This was when it was built in 1913. But it looks much different now. This is the painting of that college. Professor Muhammad Ahmad, he was a zoology teacher, but he also took students on hiking in the mountains, and he was a great photographer. And he taught us, along with zoology, the love of hiking and exploration and photography. Professor Aziz Ahmad was also a zoology professor. I was in third year, and I was passing by the department, and he was sitting outside in the corridor in the sun. It was winter. He would always stand up from his chair when anybody will come to meet him, irrespective of who they were. Student, another teacher, even an employee of the college. That was his old country courtesy. He will stand up. So he stood up, talked to me. He says, "Oh, I see that you have the poetry book of Ghalib, the famous poet." I said, "Yes." He said, "You understand it?" "Oh, look at the arrogance of youth." And I said, "Yes, sir." And he recited one couplet, and he says, "Tell me, how do you look at it? What do you see?" And I just said something. And then he took time, the professor of zoology, to make me understand that piece of poetry. That was in 1957, 50, yeah, 55 or 56. And I'm still in love with that poet. So, coincident, maybe yes, but those teachers were great teachers. They inculcated in you things which were not in the curriculum. And I have been very fortunate in this regard. This is another view of Islamic College. Shamsul Islam, he was a teacher of botany. And his life story is a fantastic. He was born in India, grew up in India. He was a brilliant student. But just like that we have political differences between different states, he wanted to do his master's in chemistry. And he did not get the admission because he had to go to another state. They didn't have in his own state, in his own home state, the facilities for post-graduation. Then he opted for something else, and that was denied to him. And the third option was botany. So he accepted that. He did his master's in botany. He went on to do a PhD. And then he developed a hybrid of wheat where instead of one cone going up, it produces two cones. So your yield is 40 or 50% more. Imagine he would have been a great chemist or a physicist, but he was brilliant, so he made the best with whatever he was given, and he made a name for himself. I want to show you one other vintage picture. Uh, this was my interest in literature has always been there. So I served on the editorial board of the college magazine, which was a literary magazine. And I don't know whether you can spot me there or not. I am not on the chairs. I am not on the chair. They're all professors, and then there's the chief editor right here. And here is the college principal or the president.
Right behind him.
Right here.
Where? That's you?
The far
Right.
right, the upper
On
far
the
right.
right,
Wow.
where are you?
I'm here.
Right,
Top right.
top right.
I thought you were in the middle.
I used to be.
Looks like Marnie.
No, but this also taught me, serving on the editorial board of the magazine, not only to write, but also to evaluate. And the teachers were sitting there who are our staff advisors. This is another picture. This teacher was an Englishman. Interesting story. He did his master's from Cambridge and came to India and became a teacher of English language in St. Stephen College in New Delhi. This was 1939 or 38. And then he volunteered to serve in the British Indian Army. So he was sent to the African Theatre of War, where he was given a company of Pashtun soldiers from where I come from, and he was the company commander as a major in the army. So the war ended, he came back, he joined his college, and in summer vacation he would come to Peshawar. And on a bicycle he would go from village to village looking for his soldiers that he would look after their welfare. So in 1946, he was visiting from Delhi to Peshawar, and the governor told him that there is a vacancy in Islamia College. Why don't you apply? Because you love. He applied. He was accepted as a lecturer, and then 1947 happened. Nobody could go that way or this way, so he got stuck in Peshawar, and he stayed the rest of his life in Peshawar. He taught English. He would have the students get up in the morning in the dead of winter and go for a 4 or 5 mile run. He will, in the summer vacation, take students with him to the mountains to spray for malaria. He would also take students to do an operation for smallpox. And in Peshawar, he always used a bike. Anywhere that he went on a bike. Now, his name was H.M. Close, and we nicknamed Haji Muhammad Close. So he was nicknamed on the campus Haji Muhammad Close. He's the only professor that when the call for prayers came from the campus mosque, he will stop for the duration of the adhan. No other professors did that, but he will stop. We became good friends. He came to Toledo, visited us one time in the 80s. And each time I went to Peshawar, it was a must for me to go and visit him. He, in a 1-bedroom apartment in one of the colleges that he had, but he was happy. And he was deeply religious person. But never ever he brought out religion for other people. So one time we were visiting him, and we had tea and all that. As we were leaving, my son Kari, he was probably about 12-year-old at that time, or 10-year-old. He said, "Mr. Close, thank you for being my father's teacher." I mean, this was such a tribute that he paid to this great man. Philanthropy. He put, I don't know, hundreds of students through school and college on his meager income. He really, in the true sense, believed in charity, the Christian concept of charity. Yeah. So I wrote about him a lot. This is a picture when he was in Toledo. This is on Mamiya River. We took this picture. And he was still living when we initiated a gold medal in Islamia College. In the background is the building of the Islamia College, and Mr. Close is in the center. We started a gold medal to be given to a student every year who excels not only in the studies, but in the social works and public service. So it was given for about 10 years, and then somehow has not been given since then. And he is under the shadow of the college building. He is now in his early 80s. But he died close to being 90 in Peshawar. Yeah. My next jump was to my medical school. So Khyber Medical College. In this gathering, there is one more person sitting who came from the same college. You did go to school, did you?
Yeah.
Somebody behind us.
Beautiful building. He was the first dean of the medical school. He was a Bengali from East Pakistan brought to the college. I have not seen a more humble man. When he would go for prayers, Friday prayers, he would take all the time in the world that after prayers that he would be praying and crying. Such a humility I have known, and he was a very well thought of physician and administrator. Nasir Azam Khan, professor of medicine, is still alive. I go and visit him whenever I am in Peshawar. He was a disciplinarian. He taught us history of medicine. Now, no other teachers did. No other teachers did. But he put whatever he was teaching, he put it in perspective. For example, he was teaching smallpox. But he brought the historic perspective and he said that there was a physician by name of Edward Jenner, who was a country physician in England. And he was sitting in his cottage with a thatched roof, and there were two milkmaids outside chatting. And this physician just put his ear to what they were saying. And one of them said to the other, since I have already contracted cowpox, now I am protected against smallpox. He had never heard of this connection. It was not part of medical knowledge. So he wrote to his good friend and mentor in London. His name was John Hunter. And he says, I heard this milkmaids talk about it. What should I do? He says, why think? Experiment. So Dr. Jenner took a 10-year-old boy and took a pus from the lesion of a cow, usually they had by the udder, and inoculated the boy. And after 6 weeks, he inoculated the boy with smallpox. And nothing happened. So there was a cross immunity. And this was the beginning of the smallpox inoculation. Now, we're talking about Dr. Nasser. When he told the story, how could you forget that story? So in 91, I had a heart attack. And I got up and I went to the kitchen and I'm looking outside, it's about 1 o'clock in the morning, and I said, you know what, it could be. I said, maybe it's something wrong with my swallowing esophagus. But I said, nothing's wrong with that. And now the pain is now spreading to my right arm and then going to my jaw. Oh my God. His voice, I kid you not, his voice came back from the classroom of medical school when he taught us heart attack, and he says, severe chest pain with radiation of the pain to the arm and the jaw is typical of heart attack. And I said, oh shit, I'm having a heart attack. So it proves the teacher who can teach you. And you can take that lesson with you. In my case, it came through when I was having a heart attack. I told him the story. He was amused. He laughed. Uh, but when I am not boasting, by the way, in this statement I'm going to tell you is when I was appointed professor of humanities, history of medicine, humanities, I wrote to him and I said, had you not put that thing in my head about loving history and loving humanities, I would have never been able to come to this point. This honor belongs to you, really, not to me. And he wrote me a very nice letter in response. He's close to 93 or 94. He's losing a little bit of his cognition, but I still love to go and see and have a cup of tea with him. This was my mentor in surgery, and he taught me the love for literature other than surgery because he enjoyed literature. That's him on some event with the students, and I'm standing by his side on the right side. My training was in different hospitals, and there was a Lady Reading Hospital, St. Charles Hospital in Toledo, Medical College of Ohio, and then Wayne State University, Detroit. That all these institutions I went through. I would hurry up because there are a few other important teachers that I want to talk about. Jerry Rosenberg was in Toledo as director of surgery at Maumee Valley Hospital, which became Medical College Hospital. And then he went to Wayne State University. When he was director of surgery in Toledo, he paid a lot of attention to me and taught me how to do research and how to write scientific papers. Until that time, I had no insight how to write papers, but he would take his time. I'm over my medical career, I wrote few papers, well, more than few papers, and I always think of him because he's the one who taught me how to do it. This was a man, his name was Frederick Douglass. Jim, probably you knew his father's name at St. Vincent. He was a big surgeon. He was director of surgery. I have not seen many bold surgeons and can-do attitude. Unfortunately, he died, had a heart attack, and died. So, this is the person I want to talk to you about. Zvi Steiger. He was a thoracic surgeon at Wayne State University. A little bit short, but he had the demeanor to make you comfortable. My first day at Wayne State University, there's a conference, and they were talking about cancer of the lung. And I made a statement, and there was a brash surgeon by name of Wilson. He looked at me and he says, that is a bullshit or something that I have heard in my life. Okay, my first day. After the conference, this man came to me and he says, Dr. Wilson is given to act like that. Don't pay attention. Yeah, you would like him eventually, and I did, but he's very outspoken. Zvi Steiger was a Jew He was in Hungary and he had gone to college. No, he had gone to high school called gymnasium. In Germany, high schools are called gymnasium. Yeah. And in the meantime, the Nazi took over the part of the country where he was from, and his parents were shipped to concentration camp. Before they left, they gave some mementos to the neighbors who were Christians, that if our son ever come back, please give it to him. So he made it back secretly. The parents were gone. And then he hid in the forest for, I don't know, weeks and made to another country where he finished his education. And then his medical school. And then he came to America and got his training. 2 years that I worked with him, I never ever heard him say once about his background. I mean, it happened to him. It was part of his life, but he was not going to make a big deal for other people. Zvi Steiger was very humble. He overcame personal tragedy and turned it into strength. Umpteen time when I operated, I thought of him and I said a prayer for him. He died. All this information that I gave you, I did not know. It was only after he died, this is about 10 years ago, that there was an article published by Wayne State University that they mentioned that. But this man had never ever brought his own personal problems. But if you needed him for anything, he was there for you all the time. Dr. Alex Falk was a surgeon, historian. He was very eloquent. He was from South Africa and became the chairman of the department at Wayne State. And later on, he became president of the American College of Surgeons, which is a very prestigious thing. He spoke with a clipped British accent. So it's 1970, we all went and we took the examination of the American Board of Surgery. Now I'm in thoracic and cardiovascular surgery, but now I'm eligible to take board in general surgery. We had come from Toledo and others, but some of the boys had gone through the Wayne State program and they were in thoracic surgery. And one of them was even faculty member. We went to Milwaukee on a very bad weather day and took the exams, and 2 or 3 of his own residents failed. And I have never seen this gentleman livid. So he called a meeting of the residents and the faculty and all of them. And just remember, he had a very clipped English accent. And he says, "Gentlemen, you ain't seen nothing yet. Your chairman from now on is going to be a son of a bitch." I mean, I could not believe that American slang coming out of his mouth. But he was very fair and he helped us. He wrote a glowing letter for me for the American Board of Thoracic Surgery, which is the examination that you take after you finish cardiovascular surgery. I was taking the exam a year earlier because I was going back. And he wrote a beautiful letter, which really convinced them that they should allow me to take my boards before I finish. Alexander Wall died of pancreatic cancer about 15 years ago, and they had a visiting professorship in his name at Wayne State University. Let's see. When I was a student, I was associated with Radio Pakistan. And I used to take part in the plays, and then I started writing for radio. And there were people, literally people who worked there. I had good interest in Urdu literature, but I did not have uh, enough in English literature except for what the books we were supposed to read as part of curriculum. One time I go there and the person I want to see is not there, and there's a gentleman by name of Yusuf Bangash. And he says, no, Danish you're looking for, he's not here, but sit down. And he asked for some tea, and the tea came. And he asked me, he says, do you read English literature? I said, yeah. Like what? I gave him some names of the books, and he said, but those are part of curriculum. Do you read anything other than that? And I said, no. So he reached down and took out a book. And he said, here, there's a novel, it's beautiful. When you finish, return it. The novel was The Wind Cannot Read. No. I remember that. It was a romance between a Japanese girl during World War II and an English pilot. Beautiful story. So I finished, I gave it to him, I thanked him, and that got me into English literature, that man who worked at the radio. So about 10 years ago, 8 years ago, Lisa and I were talking about the book, and I told her that that book had really such an impact on me. So she presented me a paperback edition of that book. Yes, and I reread it and enjoyed it again. So, and there were other people in Radio Pakistan. I will mention over only this one because they were all teachers. They taught me. This man was the assistant director of radio station. He called me, Abu Saeed Qureshi, and he told me a story that he had, an English story about a doctor and his bad life or whatever. He says, can you put it in a play? Remember I said the arrogance of exuberance? I said, yes. So I came home and whatever I outlined, I wrote the play. I took it back to him, expecting, he says, that's wonderful. And he's reading and he's quiet. And he said, 2 weeks ago there was a play by, title was Virginia. Did you listen to it? It was a radio play. I said, yes. What do you think? I said, it was wonderful. A very well-known writer had written that play. Very well-known writer. And he says he had to write it 4 times. I mean, lessons learned? What the hell I thought I was? So I rewrote it. And then I took it to him and he liked it. And it was broadcast on radio. So the other school institutions that all of you have, and that is the cities and villages we grew up. Right? Our neighbors, people on the street, they taught us so many things. They taught us do's and don'ts. We learned culture and norms not only at home, but also on the street. And here is another one, the grand man of Urdu and English literature, Satyapal Anand. He has been to Toledo many times. He is in his 90s, lives in Virginia. But there was so much influence I caught from him, being a grand old man of literature. And when I look at this journey that I shared with you, it says excellence is achieved. It is not stumbled upon in the process of amusing oneself. It requires tenacity of purpose and hard work. And those teachers that I mentioned, they all emphasize it because there were no shortcuts to success. There aren't any. And this is my last slide. This is an Urdu uh, piece of poetry by Wright. Not to see the ocean in the drop and the complete in the fragmentary would be the idle pastime of a child, not the vision of the seeing eye.
Can you read it in Urdu?
खतरे में दजला दिखाई न दे और जुज में कुल. If you have a drop and you cannot see Dajla, the river Dajla, in that drop, it will be the play of the boys. It will not be the seeing eye. So the teachers tell you how to see a Dajla in a drop of water. I mean, it's a metaphor, but in many ways it's true. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Comments, questions? I will not rebuttal. Yes? Sunny?
Thank you very much, and this is very unique, actually, topic here. Since we're talking about humanities, today, I believe it was Al Jazeera, I heard about groups, North Pakistan. They had languages which about to follow. In other words, there's some languages in North Pakistan, certain groups, that seem they are very concerned about losing the language. Yeah. And one thing, it was really fascinating. I don't want to go through details, but one thing they were talking about, it seemed there is a movement that uh, they want to record the history of these people and their languages because their language is going to go. The kids leaving, going to big cities, then obviously that affect the culture and the continuation. And it seems there is one thing they want to do is to write the history of those groups and their culture and so on and so forth. One thing they were really concerned, one thing they proposed is what I heard. They want to know if they want to write the language, you're going to use the Arabic letters or the English letters. That was really fascinating for me because you talked about Urdu, at least you mentioned Urdu, right? Okay. I think this is fascinating because I actually one of those who would like to know how Urdu came about because it was written in the Arabic text, for example. So, though this is not in the essence of what you're talking about, but this is about actually the humanities, about us as a group, and so on and so forth. And this could be actually a topic for the future. Why Turkey chose in the early 1930s, when Kemal Atatürk came, they chose to use the English script versus Urdu use Arabic.
No, it was Arabic script they were using for Turkish language.
Yeah, but now they're using.
They have language now.
Yeah, so I think what I'm trying to say here is really very, very fascinating about the idea of language and the identity and so on and so forth. If you have any comment about the Urdu, you can give us quick idea how this came about, why this is written in Arabic.
Urdu 101, 45 seconds. Urdu is a hybrid. It literally means an army camp. Urdu word means army camp. It evolved, this language, in the army camps of the Mughal kings, where the soldiers from Arab soldiers and Iranian soldiers and Turkish soldiers and Indian soldiers and Sanskrit and Hindi came into one army camp and a hybrid language evolved, which is called Urdu. It has a lot of influence of Persian, little bit influence of Arabic, much influence of Hindi and Sanskrit, and scattering of the words from Turkish. It is written with Arabic alphabet, but since we have to distinguish ourselves from Arab language and culture, we have 34 letters. Yeah, we have more letters in this language. The amazing thing is that within the span of 300 to 400 years, this language has matured beyond expectation. It has a rich literature and a great literary traditions. And it is spoken now mostly in Pakistan. India was the home of this language, but in India, it has not been treated too bad. So, 45 seconds.
Good job. Thank you.
And this was
But every day, by the way, every day, hundreds of languages are dying and disappearing. Can anybody tell me one language which was disappeared and then came back, or revived? Hebrew. Hebrew language was almost gone. But when Israel came into being, they revived the language, and now that is the official language. Hawaii. When America took over Hawaii, they banned the local language. Totally banned. And now there is a resurgence of that language. So the languages need nurturing. Otherwise, if people don't speak, they go away.
American Indian.
American Indian languages are the same way. Yeah. Thank God for English. Okay, well, thank you.